Welcome to Revelation BIB 406. This is lecture 14. In today's lecture, we're going to look at chapter 17 of the book of Revelation. All right, by way of introduction, we've mentioned before that chapters 17 through 20 are all a parenthetical section, that they make up a parenthetical section. So we're not going to move forward in our chronology of events until we get to chapter 21. All right, so the events recorded in these three chapters, 17 through 20, actually occur simultaneous to the events of the seven bowl judgments. We talked about those in the previous chapter 16, and all of these events are happening as these bowl or vial judgments are being enacted by the seven different angels. The three major events of these chapters, 17 through 20, would include the following items. You have the destruction of Babylon, the destruction of the beast and his armies, and then the binding of Satan. Those are the three primary events, and you would need to know that for a test upcoming. What are the events of chapter 17 through 20? These are the three events. All right, we also have the great harlot of chapter 17, and you'll notice a great contrast between the bride of Christ, or the Lamb's bride, and the woman described in chapter 12. So the great harlot is going to be in stark contrast to these two. So as you read through, especially chapter 17, I want you to take note of how the harlot is described, and we'll talk more about that as we kind of work on the commentary for chapter 17. Let's go to chapter 17 and start reading in verse 1. It says, "There came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth." All right, so the specific angel in verse 1 is not given a name. We do not know who exactly the angel is, but the angel is one of the seven that has been given these 7 vial or bowl judgments that are about to be leashed out upon the earth. And the angel takes John over to show him the judgment that is about to come upon what is represented by this immoral woman. And let's kind of go through the verses and just talk about what we can learn from the description that's given to this woman. Tony Garland made this comment. He said, "The great harlot is associated with Babylon." And there are verses for that, Revelation 17:5, chapter 18, 18:21, 19:2. The prophets foretold the judgment which would come against Babylon. Both Isaiah and Jeremiah devote major passages to this topic, which are essential background to an understanding of this chapter. And you can go to Isaiah and Jeremiah, those chapters there, and look at that. As we have seen before, prophecies in the Old Testament often contain a mix of near-term and far-future predictions. In the case of the prophesied destruction of Babylon, the near-term aspects were fulfilled in the capture of Babylon by Cyrus. That occurred in Daniel chapter 5. But the city of Babylon has never been destroyed as predicted by the far-future aspects of Isaiah's and Jeremiah's prophecies. She is to be judged because she has corrupted the earth with her fornication and shed the blood of God's servants. The many waters, it says that he's taken away in verse 1 to see this great whore that sitteth upon many waters. And most scholars would believe that this just speaks of her influence and power, and it's symbolically tied to ancient Babylon, and especially the location along the Euphrates River. So all of this language is very symbolic. We're not talking about a specific woman. This is just a symbolism for the city of Babylon. The city of Babylon is being symbolically described as a prostitute, and what the prostitute has done, or what this city of Babylon has done, is they have pulled people away from God, and now God is going to judge this city because of the way that it has been used by Satan to promote ungodliness and wickedness throughout all these different kingdoms, and just represents all that Satan is trying to do that is opposed to God. All right, so verse 2, sexual immorality and prostitution are spoken of symbolically and would represent spiritual idolatry. Arnold Fruchtenbaum, he gives us this commentary, which I think is helpful. It says, to prostitute something is to take that which has a proper use and turn it into an improper use. A prostitute takes sex, which has a proper use, and perverts it with an improper use, turning it into something illicit, causing fornication. In this case, the harlot represents religion, which has a proper use, but here has been prostituted for improper use. Rather than serving, it rules. The false use of religion causes spiritual fornication. The word fornication is used both of physical unfaithfulness and also of spiritual unfaithfulness, as in Hosea, Jeremiah chapter 2, Ezekiel 16, and Ezekiel 23. It is with this woman that the kings of the earth commit fornication, showing this to be a unity of religion and state. All right, so again, this is very symbolic language talking about religious, the improper use of religion, religious infidelity, using religion to actually bring people away from the truth of God. All right, so in John 3, or in 17 verse 3, John is carried away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and he sees this woman sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast, and all of these names of blasphemy are seen as well. And then it says that the beast has 7 heads and 10 horns, and all of this is symbolic language. I'm probably referring to different kingdoms, kingdoms that have been both past and present kingdoms that have come into play in the world, the landscape, the political landscape of the world. Verses 4 to 5 give this detailed description of the woman, and this is all talking about her affluence, her wealth, her power, all that she represents. It talks about the different colors, the gold, the precious stones, the golden cup that's in her hand. And then verse 5 gives that description: mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So that symbolic language becomes a little more clear here, that this is a reference to the city, the country, the kingdom of Babylon. Verse 6, he says, I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So he's saying here that the woman, or her representation of Babylon, that Babylon is responsible for the martyrdom of Christ, of Christ's followers rather, throughout history. This is looking back over the course of human history. There's an association between Babylon and the martyrdom of Christ followers. Verse 7 says, the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? Or why did you marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. So he's going to explain what all of this symbolic language is all about. Okay, and he does that in verses 8 through 18. He says, the beast that thou saw was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, or where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So even with all the symbolism in verses 8 through 18, he really explains to John, the angel does, exactly what is going on here and what the different elements of the symbolism talked about here represent. So let's talk about this for a moment and compare the city of man, which really that's what Babylon would represent. You have the beast explained in verses 8 through 14, and then you have the mystery of the woman explained in verses 15 through 18. So the 5 kingdoms that are past, those would be Babel, Syria, Egypt, Babylon, the Medes and Persians, Greece. Some would say Babel, some would say Assyria. So I know I mentioned 6 there, but some would take a different view of that. So whether it's Babel, Egypt, Babylon, Medes and Persians, and Greece, or Assyria, Egypt, Babylon, Medes and Persians, and Greece, you would have some debate there. But 5 kingdoms that are past, and then the 6th kingdom, the present kingdom, would be Rome, the Roman Empire. So those are the 6 different powers or kingdoms that he's talking about. And then you have the comparison of the city of man, which is what Babylon represents, and the city of God. So let's talk about the differences there between Babylon, the city of man, and the city of God. All right, for our comparison here between Babylon, the city of man, and the city of God, the New Jerusalem, I'm going to put up a link on Populi that will show a side-by-side comparison of these 2 cities. So just look for that link under this week's materials, and you can take a look through that.